Hello, and thank you for joining us for this presentation, AI Enhanced Employee Experience, Elevating Everyday Moments and Milestones. This program is part of the SHRM webinar series. You can learn about upcoming and on-demand events from our e-newsletters and the SHRM webinar homepage at shrm.org/webinars. SHRM thanks ServiceNow for sponsoring this program and our series of free webinars for the HR community. Before you hear from today's speaker, we want to provide you with some guidance on using the SHRM webinar interface. In the center of the screen, you should see the title slide for this program and our presenter, who you will hear from shortly. To the right of your screen is where you'll be able to submit questions to the speaker. Under the video window, you can find the program resources for this presentation. The program resources are also in your session agenda. Please click on the Read More tab in your session agenda. After this program, you'll receive an email with the SHRM recertification code. Viewing this full program qualifies for 1 PDC towards SHRM CP and SHRM SCP recertification. You can claim the program for other kinds of HR recertification credit, but you'll need to provide the details to your certifying body. We only have pre-approval for SHRM certification. Now about today's program. Today's HR professionals face unprecedented pressure to deliver personalized, meaningful, and impactful employee experiences. This session will explore practical strategies and innovative applications of artificial intelligence, or AI, including generative AI, create personalized, inclusive, and engaging employee journeys. To lead our presentation, we're pleased to welcome back Dr. Gleb Sapersky with Disaster Avoidance Experts. Here's more information about Dr. Sapersky. Dr. Gleb Sapersky was named Office Whisperer by the New York Times for helping HR leaders overcome frustrations with generative AI. He presents regularly for SHRM and serves as the CEO of the Future of Work consultancy, Disaster Avoidance Experts. Dr. Sapersky wrote 7 best-selling books, including most recently ChatGPT for Leaders and Content Creators, Unlocking the Potential of Generative AI. His cutting-edge thought leadership was featured in over 650 articles and 550 interviews in Harvard Business Review, Inc. Magazine, USA Today, CBS News, Fox News, Time, Business Insider, Fortune, the New York Times, and elsewhere. His writing was translated into Chinese, Spanish, Russian, Polish, Korean, French, Vietnamese, German, and other languages. His expertise comes from over 20 years of consulting, coaching, and speaking and training for Fortune 500 companies, from Aflac to Xerox. It also comes from over 15 years in academia as a behavioral scientist, with 8 years as a lecturer at UNC Chapel Hill and 7 years as a professor at Ohio State University. A proud Ukrainian American, Dr. Sapersky lives in Columbus, Ohio. I'm now pleased to turn over the webinar microphone to Dr. Gleb Sapersky.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Connor, and welcome everyone. Let's talk about generative AI and how you as HR leaders and HR professionals can enhance employee experience, elevating everyday moments and milestones into unforgettable ones. Now, Connor mentioned that I have a book out on this topic, and ChatGPT for thought leaders and content creators, for leaders and content creators. I want to be clear, I'm not selling this book on this training. I'm giving it away for free. So you should be able to see on the slides free training resources at tinyurl.com/DAE event. So again, tinyurl.com/DAE event. Go there and you will get a copy of my book and the PowerPoint and other relevant resources for generative AI strategic adoption and enhancing employee experience. So that's something you should know. And now, without further ado, let's talk about the topic at hand, enhancing employee experience using generative AI strategies. First, we'll talk about why AI matters in employee experience. So what are the benefits of using generative AI tools in employee experience for you as an HR professional? Then we'll talk about what are the actual practical tools that you can use and techniques that you should adopt for yourself your HR team. And then how do you do it? What are the successful strategies to integrate AI in your HR processes? So that's the shape of the introduction. That's the shape of the presentation. Three-part presentation, pretty simple, pretty logical. The benefits, the techniques, and how to integrate them. Tools and techniques and how to integrate them. All right. Let's talk about why AI matters. So this is part one. Why AI matters in employee experience for you. So thinking about AI mattering, HR is facing a number of challenges and always has to do more with less. That's always been the case with HR, but it's especially been the case. It's especially the case now with increasing adoption of technology of various sorts of digital transformation and increasing expectation on the parts of your employees. Your employees are diverse, and HR is struggling with various needs across generations and cultures, from Gen Z who are digital natives to folks who are baby boomers who are not as comfortable with technology and who have different preferences and perceptions about what employment should be like. It can also be hard to maintain consistent engagement with consistent experiences among employees as companies are growing. Hopefully your company is growing, but that's a particular challenge I've seen. Then limited data usage. So HR is collecting a lot of employee data, but it's such a challenge to use it effectively. It can be a hose of data, and there's a challenge with how to use the data effectively to actually get at the employee experience that you want to have. And then personalization. Employees are experiencing personalization in their personal lives, and they're expecting the same thing in their work lives. They need to respond to that. Traditional HR approaches, unfortunately, fall short in these domains. Typically, you see a lot of manual processes or traditional technologies that aren't quite up to snuff with use where you are putting in repetitive tasks and you're consuming valuable time. Also, generic communication with one-size-fits-all communication is not up to what employees expect. That's personalized communication. Responses tend to be slow when you use manual processes. Unsurprisingly, that's generally the case, but you can get much faster if you use generative AI. And also being reactive is not great. You want to actually be proactive and notice when things are going off track and intervene before the emerging issues actually emerge. Now, today's workforce, of course, has a lot of expectations. With work-life balance, greater flexibility in where people work and when people work. That's a major demand. We've seen a recent, for example, report from Flex Index, which shows that people are still demanding substantial work from home, or at least time schedule flexibility. So that's something that you need to respond to. People are also much more interested in continuous feedback, and they're getting in their personal lives with, let's say, budgeting apps and so on, which allow them to continuously monitor how they're doing in various areas of their life, and they want that in their work life. People are also looking for more proactive support, real-time assistance, 24/7 accessibility. And of course, it's hard for you as HR when people email you and ask questions which you've answered 100 times, but there's another employee who either got or has a new question, or a new employee has a question. So that's hard for you. And then people are interested in career development with clear paths for growth and skill building, especially given the impact of HR. People are intimidated, and given the impact of AI, people are intimidated and worried, and they're coming to HR to ask for help with the impact of AI. And so that's something that you need to be worried about. And so this is where the power of personalization can be a great tool that AI can help facilitate. It boosts satisfaction. So personalization, definitely we have research that shows that it boosts employee loyalty. Inclusivity, people feel that they're more included when communication and engagement and feedback is personalized to them. It strengthens team cohesion and strengthens their ability to innovate. they're more engaged. Look at Gallup research on engagement. People are more engaged with more meaningful interactions, increased productivity. And of course, retention, which is a hard metric that you can see where customized support, customized personalized communication, responsiveness reduces turnover from employees. Generative AI is something that will definitely transform HR. So it's kind of a question of where are you in that train? Are you on the train or are you in front of the train? You want to be on the train. You don't want to be in front of the train. And unfortunately, people who are not prepared for when generative AI is impacting them will be falling behind. So personalized communication is something that generative AI enables. It enables customized messaging at scale for your employees. Whether you have 10 employees or 10,000 employees, you can use generative AI to personalize your messaging to them. It allows real-time responses where a lot of questions. So I've worked with a number of companies that built out Copilot solutions to answer the large majority of HR-related questions quickly and easily in a 24/7 format. And employees are very happy to get immediate support. And we have something like only 20% of questions that need to be answered by a human. Predictive insights. You can anticipate issues before they become problems. And we'll talk about how to do that. That's definitely important. And then strategic focus. If you automate your routine tasks, you are focused on more high-value tasks, like responding to issues that you're seeing, those 20% of more complex problems that generative AI can't address, or being proactive in addressing people's concerns that are emergent. AI is also great for enhancing employee journey touch points. I will talk about all of those and tools and techniques of how to do so, but just to give you an overview, personalized onboarding. So you want to tailor experiences that set up employees for success. And generative AI is a great tool to do that because you have some data on the employees, it can personalize onboarding to their needs. Then continuous feedback. So real-time input that helps employees grow, that their supervisor can have available to employees and provide to employees, and that the employee knows that their supervisor is looking at this and has approved this feedback, and this is reflective of where they are currently and what they need to work toward. Career development. So you have recommendations for growth opportunities that people are not aware of. I mean, people often leave companies because they don't know about growth opportunities, or their growth is stunted because they don't know about growth opportunities. You know, some people are great at getting mentors and being proactive at pushing their way up the ranks and into the career ladder. But there are so many people who are good performers, even great performers, whose skills don't include building up their career. They think wrongly that just because they do good work, they will be noticed. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but many people don't realize, and even if they do, they don't know how to put themselves forward for career growth. So this is an opportunity to address those problems and reach an under-supplied group and make use of talent that's not being currently tapped. And enhanced communication, so more timely and relevant messages that will resonate with employees. We talked about that before, but I just want to highlight that personalized communication is very valuable. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a good overview of the kind of benefits that generative AI can provide to you. Now, let's talk about the tools and techniques that you can use with AI to transform your employee experiences. Personalized employee messaging. So you can automate communications effectively. You can use tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Microsoft Copilot to deliver more tailored messages to employees. So that will help ensure that messages are more clear. There's consistent HR interactions across the organization, that they all go from the center to all the employees in a clear and transparent manner. And that helps boost engagement, where you have relevant messages that increases employee satisfaction while reducing your workload as HR professionals. So personalized messaging is really important. And I'll tell you about a success story of a regional bank that I worked with, which used this technique of personalized messaging. And we found that using more personalized messaging. So what does personalized messaging mean? Just to illustrate what we're talking about here. So you have people who are getting messages about their retirement plans. You have people who are getting messages about promotion opportunities customized to them based on their stage in the journey of employment journey, whatever they happen to be, and various career development opportunities. So whatever is needed to them, whatever is relevant to them is customized using tools like ChatGPT, Claude, and Copilot. And we had, as a result of this customization of messaging to the needs of each individual employees, we saw over 6 months a 23% engagement boost, with overall employee engagement increasing significantly. And we had 100% regulatory compliance with this messaging because customer data wasn't included, which, that was not a problem, but it's good to get that clarity that it's banks. I'm including that just because I worked with a number of finance organizations, and I've seen banks be concerned about regulatory compliance. So just always highlight that, even though there was no data from customers, but that just want to make it very clear. And then communication efficiency. It doubled the speed of information delivery to employees, so that drafts were drafted much more quickly because generative AI can draft things easily. HR was just involved in customizing it and editing it and making sure it's all accurate. Proactive sentiment management. So sentiment management, you probably know about this. It's where you look at how employees feel and you make sure proactively to address any problems. So monitoring feedback is one example, where you're tracking employee sentiment in real time, where you can analyze trends by identifying issues early through sentiment analysis. So tools like ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot and so on can allow you to evaluate the employee sentiment. So let's say you're using Microsoft and you have Copilot turned on. You can look at all your Teams chats and see employee sentiment based on the chats. Very helpful. Responding quickly. So you can have a flag that generative AI tracks sentiment is changing in a negative direction. And so you could see what's going on and address emerging concerns promptly. And then thus you can implement solutions. So you could take targeted actions based on insights. And so I worked with a healthcare provider that implemented SHRM specifically as a tool here, which had a sentiment tracking platform. It identified issues proactively in advance, spotting dissatisfaction before it affected retention. And as a result of this implementation, it improved retention by 21%, achieving significant improvements. So this was over, I believe, about a 12-month period. This one was about a year-long implementation of SHRM. And as we could see, this was quite successful. So this is an example where you're using generative AI to look at sentiment and intervene early when you're seeing problems. All right, let's talk about virtual assistants for employee support. I find that this is kind of probably the favorite tool of HR professionals because it just takes so much annoying and hassleful activities off their plate. So whenever I work with a company, this is the favorite thing that HR really love. It helps so you can have assistants for various purposes. For example, automating onboarding, personalizing the experience for each new hire, real-time assistance. So for questions, generic questions that you can answer 24/7, freeing HR staff to focus on more strategic high-level initiatives, and that helps improve satisfaction, especially among new hires who have a lot of questions. So, as one example, I worked with a manufacturer in the Midwest, which had a lengthy onboarding process, which slowed productivity for new hires. And HR team had, this was a manufacturer, they were frankly understaffed with HR. So HR had to deal with lots of repetitive questions and tasks. Their turnover was pretty high. This is, again, manufacturing firm. And so they had to deal with the same questions all the time. So we deployed ServiceNow as AI virtual assistant for onboarding that automated common HR tasks and new hire questions for onboarding, and then reduced new hire ramp-up time by 34%. That was over 6 months, by improving the clarity and speed of the onboarding process, and that was quite effective for HR folks to reduce their time burden spent on this task. So let's talk about another example, talent acquisition. This takes up a lot of time for HR, of course, talent acquisition. And one way that generative AI helps is with personalized outreach. So you have tailored messages to different candidates based on where they are in the stage of the process. That helps increase candidate engagement, helps reduce drop-off from among the candidate pipeline. It helps improve your employer branding, especially if you are a larger company. You want to think about branding and how you can have content that's AI generated to attract top talent. Virtual assistant improves candidate experience. So if you have a virtual assistant dedicated not to onboarding, but to talent acquisition, again, answering lots and lots of questions at all stages of the process, that helps reduce your time, that helps improve candidate experience. It's a win-win all around. And even predictive success. So interview analytics can help forecast job performance if you have sufficient historic data. So e-commerce, this was an e-commerce firm that I worked with, which found that using this technique helped improve retention. So predictive interview analytics improved new hire success. Then it helped improve site traffic. We have AI-generated content that with branding that increased career page visits. So that was good. Then response rate. So personalized content boosted candidate engagement with the actual content of the boosted their engagement and made them more likely to go through the pipeline and go through all the process of the interviews, because several process steps. And that had faster hiring, 25% faster hiring as a result of this implementation. That was over a 12-month period or so, with shortened recruitment cycles with automated follow-ups. So really beneficial for e-commerce. This could be for any firm. Okay, let's talk about retention, predictive analytics. So you can identify risks with detecting employees likely to leave. This can be things like sentiment analysis or drop-offs in performance, various things that indicate disengagement. It can help you analyze the patterns that lead to this potential problem and help you develop targeted interventions to address problems with employees. Even life events that might be causing employees to leave that you can intervene in, but employees might not know resources that you have available that you can help them with. And that helps you also measure results with tracking improvements in retention metrics. So I worked with an insurance company to address their turnover concerns. We implemented IBM Watson, which has an advanced analytics tool that forecasts attrition risks with quite high accuracy. Once we gave it the data of historical patterns of employees, and they were able to look at patterns and make some predictions. And that proactively identified employees considering departure before there was actually formal notice, which is very important because the earlier you can catch the satisfaction, the less likely employees will be to leave. So HR was able to develop personalized retention plans based on retention in predictive insights. And by the way, they were able to do this because they were other tools that we implemented earlier at this company, like the virtual. This is, by the way, this is not like a 101. This is a 201. 101, at this company, this was the second phase of the implementation. Earlier, this insurance company, we did things like the HR virtual assistants, which helped free up the time of HR professionals, which now they were able to devote much more effectively to more targeted strategies for employees. And this is an example of what they were able to do as a result. So that I'm kind of going from the less complex ones to the more complex ones. And that resulted in a 12-month period, an 18% turnover reduction with improvements in employee retention and satisfaction, happiness across all departments. So this is an example of, and again, this is not something that was easily enabled by having the employees who HR doesn't have as much time right now, typically, to do this sort of personalized intervention. But once they had more time, they were able to do this. Now, let's talk about well-being support. This is another area where AI can shine and help HR with holistic health, so complete mental and physical wellness through virtual coaching, automated support conversations. So AI is quite helpful for that. It can help with early identification of stress signals of burnout, and it can be confidential, discreet and stigma-free resource. So this is something to think about. Lots of people are concerned about burnout, and generative AI is a great tool to address that. Lots of employees are willing to share with generative AI when they wouldn't be able to share with HR. And so this is something that you can be quite pleased about as a tool. And again, you don't have to know, to be very clear, you don't have to know anything about the employees. So you can have confidentiality. So this is a confidential tool. So this is something that I worked with a law firm to introduce this tool. So it allowed confidential check-ins, real-time mental health support, which provided privacy and accessibility. And you probably know that lawyers are struggling with mental health, definitely a serious issue, not something to be underestimated. And so by providing confidential check-ins with real-time mental health support, it provided privacy and accessibility. And we saw a very big increase over a 12-month period in staff using wellness resources, including this tool and other wellness resources that this tool recommended, because it can recommend tools. So it had 41% participation increase and 19% less stress leave. So leave due to stress substantially decreased over the period of a year as a result of implementing this tool. What about performance management? So it's something that supervisors, especially operations leaders, really like to learn more about. And this is where you can be a real good business partner to them by talking about AI-driven performance management. So Bamboo HR and Lattice provide database assessment that reduce bias and subjectivity for objective evaluations. So you're thinking performance evaluations. And they provided continuous feedback that I mentioned earlier, real-time performance insights that replace outdated tools like annual reviews. AI tools can track progress and enhance transparency in performance discussions. Very helpful. So very useful tool. So as an example, I worked with a tech services firm, this was in the Southeast, and it was helping with technological integration for manufacturers. And this was something that they were really happy about with integrating a performance management tool. It provided a satisfaction boost with performance reviews of 27%. So employees were much more satisfied with much more continuous feedback and this tool. 100% real-time feedback with continuous assessment that we actually replaced annual reviews. You can also just complement the annual reviews, but this provided 100% ability to have real-time feedback where they can just use this anytime and they can check in anytime on how they're doing. And a 40% bias reduction, decreasing subjective elements in evaluations, which, to be honest, you likely have some bias in performance evaluation, especially bosses who are overwhelmed with around performance time, and they just let their bias creep in, and this is a very helpful way of addressing it. Career growth. So let's talk about career growth. AI can help your employees develop more personalized career plans with tailored career development journeys, matching skills to internal opportunities that they might not know about and that you can help alert them to. This is part of personalized communication and proactive communication. And it can help provide custom-built learning resources that are going to be internalized to your firm. You have tools like Gloat, Fuel 50, and Agreed that enhance internal mobility and address skill gaps. So I worked with a retail chain. This was a regional retail chain based in Northwest for AI integration. We implemented Gloat here for personalized development. And it helped identify good talent, matching internal talent to opportunities with a 25% engagement boost and 22% more promotions. So 25% engagement boost with internal career development opportunities, with people actually pursuing these internal promotions, and with 22% more internal promotions as a result, which is great. We had used our talent effectively. So this is an example of how you would use generative AI to achieve the goal of career development. Okay. So let's talk Turkey. Let's talk about how you can successfully integrate AI in your processes as an HR professional. Identify quick, impactful wins for immediate results. This is something that I strongly recommend. I always, when I start these conversations, when I start an AI engagement project, I'm always asked, should I focus on quick wins or should I focus on long-term impactful things? And I have a matrix. We evaluate what is the most impactful thing that you can do with generative AI. So looking at impact, so we brainstorm a number of activities that you can do with generative AI. What are the activities that you can do with generative AI as an HR professional? Then we look at rating them. What is the most impactful? What is the second most impactful? What is the third most impactful? And so on, from the highest to the lowest. And then we have a second rating, feasibility. What is the most feasible? What is the second most feasible? What is the third most feasible? And so on. And what is the least feasible? And I recommend starting on the things that have a decent impact but are highest feasibility. Those are the quick, impactful wins, because AI is something that people are still often uncomfortable with. So it's much better to give a quick, impactful win than have a long-term slog that has a higher impact in the end, but it takes a long time to get through it, because sometimes people just won't even do it. And sometimes people trail off and they don't pursue the project just because it's so hard and people are intimidated by AI. So you want to target processes with high employee frustration first, but again, high feasibility. Automate repetitive tasks, freeing HR teams to focus on strategic initiatives. Like I said, the thing that I find most useful for HR teams is a co-pilot, an assistant that helps answer common questions. Address communication gaps, like that virtual assistant, that improve information flow, and then measure and share success, celebrating early wins. Executive sponsorship is really important for you to have success in integrating generative AI effectively into your HR activities. So you want to start by communicating outcomes. What are the expected business results? The leaders in the C-suite are quite happy about a virtual assistant tool that is connected to your policies and workbook and so on, your employee handbook and your retirement planning handbook and all this stuff, that people leave handbook, like lists all this stuff, because then it saves them. They can obviously see how it will save HR time. That's why I strongly recommend starting with this, and that HR can focus on more effective things that can have a higher impact. Leaders can see, and it's not very, very expensive to set that stuff up if you know what you're doing. And so that is an early quick win. Expected business results, obvious. You save a lot of time, and you can choose to focus the time of HR on more high impact things that actually help drive business results. Strategic alignment. Connect HR AI projects with executive priorities. So after you do an immediate quick win, you want to think about what are the executive priorities. So when you think about what is the highest impact, that matrix that I talked about, think about what are executive priorities and focus on things that leaders really want to see. So whatever it might be. And then demonstrate ROI. Show value through pilots. So have pilots, launch an initial pilot, see how it's successful, maybe in one operation unit, and then transfer to other operation units once it's successful. Maybe you can work, an HR business partner can work with an enthusiastic AI evangelist operations leader to introduce AI-driven performance management and see how that works. Building employee trust is really important. People are very anxious around AI. We have a recent survey out that showed that something like over 70% of people are anxious about the career impact of generative AI tools. And it's realistic. Lots of people have already lost their jobs, especially in software and writing and editing because of generative AI. And lots of people will lose their jobs. So it's just the reality of the situation. And so you need to build employee trust. Transparent communication, discussing how AI is going to be used and its benefits to employees. Talk about how it will help them save time, be more efficient, be more effective. Have fair and explainable decisions. Ensure AI systems make decisions that can be clearly explained, that are not going to be perceived as biased. Have employee involvement in your AI activities. So have employee give feedback on AI solutions when they're developing, when you're refining them, and so have continuous feedback. And then have privacy protection. Have clear communication about how you'll ensure privacy for employees. And that's very valuable, especially in things like the wellness tool that I mentioned before, if you're going to be introducing that sort of tool. Ethical considerations. Establish clear frameworks of responsible AI usage. So have whatever your industry standards are, your organizational values, make sure that those are aligned with AI usage. And be very clear about what you're doing and have that communication to employees about how you're doing it. Data privacy. Ensure AI implementations comply with relevant regulations like GDPR, CCPA, industry-specific requirements. I know these are jargon if you don't know about them, but if you do know about them, these are all things with various municipalities and states and countries, EU, and so on, that have various regulations. So just make sure that you're complying with those. And have ongoing review. Implement audits of AI systems to identify and address potential biases and fairness issues. There was an episode in, I think, 2023 when Italy, for example, banned the use of ChatGPT for non-compliance and then allowed it back. But that's an example. You don't want to be using a technology that might suddenly be banned. So be careful about what tools you're adopting. So various HR technologies that are coming that might be pitching you their services, be careful about making sure that whatever you're adopting is going to be pass ethical muster. Okay, so let's talk about what are the steps in adoption. And this is, by the way, the process that I typically go through with HR teams when I help them adopt generative AI or the company as a whole. So I work with SMEs and middle market firms to help them adopt generative AI, especially professional services and financial firms, but also others. First, conduct surveys. So gathering structured feedback on pain points. What are the pain points of HR, whatever else it might be? Analyze what are the patterns in feedback data and prioritize the impact. What are the gaps that affect engagement? And then validate your findings through direct employee input. And of course, that's going to be the experience gaps. So you're looking at employee experience, what are the biggest gaps? And here's where we're looking at impact. And then select the right AI solutions. Align AI tools with identified gaps. Make sure that they're feasible. I talked about the difference between the impactful versus feasible. One of the aspects of feasibility is compatibility with existing systems. if you already have some HR systems, internal systems, ERPs, whatever they might be, there are going to be AI tools that are going to be more compatible and less compatible with those. And you want to choose ones that are more compatible. Prioritize usability. Again, encourage adoption. And that's going to be, again, feasibility. You want to make it feasible and easy to adopt these tools. And have pilots. Pilot first before full-scale implementation. Don't just roll it out willy-nilly across the firm. Then, train HR and employees. So sometimes it might be just HR who needs to be trained if you're going to be using this as an internal tool. Sometimes if it's going to be an HR tool that's going to be facing employees, then employees will need to be trained. Let's say you're launching a co-pilot to employees on HR questions, just train them on how to use it. You don't have to do something complex. You can just send them a quick, brief guide on it. Of course, if it's going to be something more complex, you might send something more complex. But especially for HR, you want to train HR on how to use it. Role-specific training, so tailor learning paths to different needs, depending on the engagement with the tool. Provide practice, building practical skills through application. And then offer ongoing resources, ensuring help when needed. So HR, again, plenty of tools are going to be just HR specific for, let's say, sentiment analysis and predictive analytics. Some are going to be very easy and self-explainable, like a Copilot, but some are going to require more training, like performance management. So those would require more training. Next, monitor outcomes and refine. So look at metrics. Make sure that you're tracking the metrics on HR tools, whatever tools you're using, and then gather continuous employee insights over time, because you want to adjust the tool. You want to identify areas that might need enhancement, that might need improvement, and then improve it over time. And share what you're doing with your employees, because communication improves transparency, and people will be happy to know about how their feedback is improving whatever tool, generative AI tool you're using. So have both success and challenges. Don't just share about all the successes and awesomeness, but talk about challenges that you're having. So for example, if you have a performance management tool and there are some challenges with it, you want to talk about this is the challenges that we're having and this is how we improved it. Usually you want to take care of that in the pilot stage, but sometimes the pilot stage goes well and you do broader rollout and there's some issues and you want to still make sure to track those and address those over time. So here's a client I worked with. This is a California-based professional services firm with about 400 employees that we did an HR transformation projects. Let me share about it with you. So first, we did the things that I talked about before. We did surveys to look at employee experience gaps, detailed employee surveys that revealed onboarding as a key pain point for the HR departments. Of all the things that we looked at, that was the biggest challenge, both among employees, that they didn't have a great experience with onboarding, especially some folks who were onboarded remotely. And so this was a challenge. And this had some people who were working hybrid, some people who were working remote. And so HR was also overwhelmed with onboarding. They had difficulties with it. So we decided that was going to be the issue that we focused on first, early on. So we used analytics to identify urgent communication issues. We identified feedback highlighting employee confusion in the onboarding process. And then we validated it through employee interviews, prioritizing the onboarding process. So that was the thing that we focused on. Next, looking at employees' needs. So we chose an AI onboarding assistant with ServiceNow, which was aligned with the specific pain points that we wanted to address. And then we made sure that it integrated easily with existing systems, which ServiceNow does. We ensured the tool was intuitive to use so that it had rapid adoption, which that definitely wasn't an issue, and vendor reliability and responsive support, which was great. So again, you want to think about all these things: user experience, system integration, vendor reliability, data privacy, all of those sorts of things when you're selecting the tool. Training HR and employees. So we had clear and role-specific training materials for HR staff. We also provided some much more basic training for new hires on how to use this tool. And we had some interactive learning sessions for build user confidence with the AI system for HR staff. Then we had continuous support resources. So we provided ongoing assistance through documentation and help channels for folks to be able to use them. This was for HR, mainly. For users, it was data, it was resources in the form of online courses, but we had some direct ability for HR to contact us to communicate about various issues they were having and to address them. And we had improvements. We regularly enhanced the training based on employee input and usage patterns. Now, this is what we got with monitoring and refining. So we tracked the metrics, monitoring employee satisfaction and onboarding efficiency over time. We gathered feedback, monthly input from new hires about their experiences, and we made the adjustments. So we addressed minor AI improvements over time, and we shared these results to stakeholders. So this was folks in HR who were actually in charge of onboarding, as well as the leadership team. So as a result of this tool, this was over a 6-month period, we had a 28% improvement in new hire satisfaction from onboarded employees, and from HR, a 31% rise in satisfaction among HR staff who were involved in onboarding, which was great. That's kind of the results that we wanted. That was excellent. So as you're thinking about using generative AI tools in your HR work, think about transforming employee experiences. That generative AI is great for enhancing everyday employee experiences, as well as important milestones like onboarding. So make sure that you address these needs and adopt generative AI effectively. Prioritize personalization, personalized communication, personalized development plans, personalized career growth, personalized performance management that enables proactive HR interactions and effective communication while saving HR time, which is great. Choose your tools specifically, strategically, that align with your needs rather than implementing technology for its own sake just because it sounds cool. That's really important. IT will often sometimes push technology just because it sounds cool, but you want to focus on the needs and the problems that it solves. Sometimes IT will push a broad platform, like let's say ChatGPT, where instead you need a narrow platform that solves the needs specifically of HR. So think about what tool is actually going to solve your specific problem. Continuous improvement is important. Establish ongoing adjustment and process of whatever tool you're using, because you need to make sure that the tool you're using is going to be something that you can adjust over time to ensure that AI solutions evolve with organizational needs. And build momentum. Have quick wins as the starting point to establish trust and create momentum for broader AI adoption across HR functions over time. Okay, so broader resources. So you'll have a link to the slides and a free coaching session to integrate these strategies into your work, as well as, I told you I'm not selling my book, a copy of my best-selling book. So for free, ChatGPT for thought leaders and content creators, unlocking the potential of generative AI. Now you can get those at tinyurl.com/DAE event. You should be able to just put that in. Doesn't take much time. Just type that in, tinyurl.com/DAE event into your browser, and you'll get those resources. So again, let me spell that for you. tinyurl.com/DAEEVENT. Put that into your URL to get them resources, and you'll get a copy of my book, the slides, and a free coaching session. Finally, that's again tinyurl.com/DAE event. All right, and I'll be happy to take any questions at this stage.
All right, thank you. We will turn to audience questions in just a moment. This webinar is sponsored by ServiceNow. In today's dynamic business environment, ServiceNow is putting AI agents to work for people through a modern, scalable employee experience platform that simplifies how work gets done. By leveraging AI agents and advanced digital workflows on a single platform, companies can boost employee productivity, reduce operational costs, and make smarter talent decisions. ServiceNow connects and unifies employee services, support, and communications across the enterprise, transforming fragmented systems into seamless, intuitive experiences that drive business growth and employee satisfaction. To learn more, please visit servicenow.com/ex. All right, before we turn to audience questions, here's the information on the PDC. You earn today towards SHRM CP and SAP recertification. You can claim your credit by using the number 25FKSVT. Again, that number is 25FKSVT. Regardless of the type of recertification you have, you must keep track of the SHRM webinars you watch and keep a reliable record on your end. All right, turning to questions. We have time for a couple. Our first question, do you have a list of AI providers? I've been looking for AI solutions for my organization.
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned a few during the presentation, more ranging from obviously ServiceNow, SHRM, Gloat, and so on. So you should be able to take a look at the slides, and for each one, I list tools that would be relevant for things ranging from performance management to onboarding. And I will also email you the resources. If you go to tinyurl.com/DAE event, I will personally email everyone a copy of the resources. And then if you have specific questions about a specific tool, I'll be happy to answer specific questions about a specific tool. Just respond to me, ask the question, or you can schedule a meeting to talk about that. So I'll be happy to talk through any tools that you might need during a meeting.
All right. Let's see, we got one more question here. Can Copilot be used to answer routine HR questions as an AI assistant if we feed it out policies and procedures?
Absolutely. Yep. That's what I mentioned before. That this is the lowest hanging fruit for HR. Might not be the most high impact. Probably when I look at impact from a business perspective, what operations leaders most love is the continuous performance feedback. That's something that they are very enthusiastic about, but that's more of a 201 implementation tool that takes quite a bit of work to make it work because you have to change your performance evaluation procedures. But they love it and employees love it. From the perspective of HR, what frees up the most time and what's the easiest thing to do is using something like Copilot or ChatGPT, whatever you have inside your system, or Claude as an assistant. So creating a Copilot, feeding it your information and having it answer questions. Now, in order to do that, you need to think about what kind of prompts you're using. So you need to create the right, not simply feeding it the data, but also having the right prompt so that people who are asking questions of the Copilot that you create are going to get the right answer. So you need to give it certain guidance on how to answer the question that employees ask. And that's something that you can work on, and I can help you with if you set up a meeting or if you ask me questions by email. I'll also be happy to work on that. So it's a combination of feeding it your data and having the right prompt for how it would answer employee questions.
Great, thank you. We've got time for one more question. What might be the average amount of time you have seen saved by HR practitioners in onboarding by adopting AI integration?
So the professional service firm in California that I mentioned, I think their numbers were something like around 35% time saved. So that was pretty standard. I'd say anywhere from 30 to 40% of time saved with current tools. Now, the tools that are going to be coming out within the next 6 to 12 months that are more developed AI agents. So let me clarify. Right now, the AI agents that we have available are able to do essentially one task at a time. So you're able to you can string together multiple tasks, but they get less and less reliable the more tasks you have strung together. So it's simplest to set up a number of separate agents for individual tasks. And that reduces efficiency because it creates some complexity with different agents for different tasks. And so the tools that the companies are coming out, and I'm looking at their internal project pipeline over the next 6 to 12 months, will have agents that can take a number of tasks together and accomplish they can be given a goal and certain data and certain prompts, and they can accomplish a number of tasks together. So you can have not simply a way for people to ask questions and answer questions for, let's say, HR, like onboarding processes, but an individualized mentor for each employee that remembers the questions that that employee asked, that's given the data on that employee, as well as your guidance, and that remembers the questions that employee asked and is able to give them customized, personalized advice based on who that employee is and their preferences and perspectives. So in the future, there's no question that each employee will have a mentor inside the company, a digital mentor. And so that's something that's coming up, and that's something that you need to plan for. It's not there yet, but it's something that will be there in the future. And that will save 70, 80% of the time for onboarding for HR.
Wow. All right. Thank you so much for coming to the end of this program. And we've got about a minute before the program window closes. In a post-webinar email, you'll receive the post-webinar survey, as well as the SHRM recertification code. We hope you'll take a few moments to fill out that survey. It helps us assess this program and plan for future events. Before we sign off, we want to thank our presenter, Dr. Gleb Sapersky with Disaster Avoidance Experts, for the information he provided today. And we also want to thank everyone tuning in for being with us and for choosing SHRM for HR webinars. That concludes this program.